A YouTube user made a two-part video in which he gave replies to claims that he associates with libertarianism, and I was quickly asked to give a response. I'm busy working on the follow-up to George Ought to Help at the moment, so I'm going to keep this brief, and I'll only address what I think was his strongest argument, his strongest claim. So he tries to defend the idea of the social contract, and he's talking about explicit contracts. So he has in mind the contracts where a person signs, they sign this contract at some point in their life, and the contract includes clauses that say that the person will abide by the laws of the government. And the position of this YouTube user was that taxation, for instance, is made legitimate when an explicit contract of this kind is signed. Although I don't believe that such contracts are legitimate, in this video I'm going to argue a more modest position, or a weaker claim, that the existence of a contract signed by a person is not necessarily binding on them. And if I'm successful in doing that, then the validity of the social contract that this YouTube user assumes to exist needs to be established. So here's a hypothetical. Imagine that together with a group of bandits, I invade a remote settlement. When I get there, I kill all the bakers, and then I set up my own bakery, and I make it known that anyone who dares to make bread on their own, they'll be killed. And next, I offer the surviving residents a deal, and if they sign a contract stating that they will obey any of my commands, all of my commands, I will agree to sell bread to them. And included in the contract is a clause that says the resident can opt to leave the settlement at any time, and that absolves them from having to follow my commands. So one day, I issue the command that all residents who signed the contract must build a temple in my honor. Does the existence of the contracts mean that my command is legitimate and must be obeyed by all those wishing to stay? I don't think so. In the hypothetical situation, I was using aggression to limit the choices of the people I was offering my deal to. In other words, my aggression had put the people who signed it under duress, and in my view, the contracts that were signed under this situation are void. They are not binding the way a state behaves and this gang of bandits in the thought experiment. Both entities used threats of violence to prevent people from producing certain goods and services, and they then established themselves as monopolists with regard to providing these things. They then offer people a deal, abide by our rules and enjoy our goods and services, or leave. So I hope that you agree that the bread contracts offered by the bandits are not, they don't represent legitimate and binding agreements. This means that the background presence of aggression by one of the parties to a contract is important in determining whether the contract, that the presence of aggression can mean that such an agreement isn't binding. I've shown how the state behaves in an analogous way to the bandits with regard to the use of threats of force to maintain a monopoly position, and it remains to be demonstrated how the social contract between a state and its subjects is meaningfully, ethically distinct from the bandits' bread contract. While this hasn't been established, the case for a social contract isn't persuasive.